Welcome to Fire is Orange, a short story compilation by #1 New York Times bestselling author Scott Sigler. 10 titillating tales to tantalize your thoughts.
Hey, junkies, this is ARealGirl. I'm here at the Lair of Doom with Scott Sigler. How are you?
You're here with me. I'm good, but
You
also
are.
with us now, apparently, are ghosts. We have ghosts in the building.
Well, yeah, it's probably good to talk about that at the top of this conversation because we might hear a lot of sort of pipe clanging just started today, and we don't know if you'll be able to hear it if it shows up. So we are here to talk about, to do the Q&A for Fire is Orange.
Yes.
What's interesting is a lot of people sent in questions, and they sent in questions, there were almost all the subject lines were like a Q&A question for Fire is Orange or a Q&A for the hippo. But the hippo actually, some of those emails actually include Fire is Orange questions. So I feel like that was a popular story.
Well, it did take 5 episodes. It's one of my favorite stories. It's pretty demented.
It is pretty demented.
Pretty demented. Hopefully people enjoyed it as well.
Hippo has a little bit of a rough time of things.
We're ready to do some Q&A. Do we have any announcements we have to make first? Or we just jump right into the Q&A?
We'll jump right into the only one announcement, and then I think we'll cover with the questions. We'll cover the rest. Is I know lots of people have been emailing asking about Siglerfest, what the hotel is and what the dates are, and we're still figuring that out. We should know by the time we do our year in review or whatever, which we still have to record sometime this month. We sort of have all those details.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so first question. This is from Godfrey. He says, "Hi Scott, hi A. First off, thank you. Your podcast helps me get through each day. Okay, hallmark moment out of the way. Here's my question.
All right.
Please take a look at these matchups. Who would win in hand-to-hand combat, assuming both people are in their peak physical condition?
Got it. Go.
Magnus Paglione versus Patrick O'Doyle.
Right off the bat's a tough one. Magnus Paglione, Patrick O'Doyle. I probably have to go with Patrick O'Doyle on that one in his prime, because while Magnus Paglione was special forces and is a killer, Patrick O'Doyle has a lot more experience in that field, as people will find out when Mount Fitzroy comes out in a while.
Yeah, sometime in 2020, we know
in a
that.
while.
I'm hoping it still may. We'll figure it out.
We'll see.
Next matchup, Perry Dawsey versus Brock Sockman.
Oh, that's a deep cut.
No, that is
a deep cut.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Brock Sockman, easy for me to say, is a character in a short story called Clean Up on Aisle 5. Is that right?
Beam Up on Aisle 5.
Yeah, I knew it was not quite right.
Yes.
That I think is in
Bones Are White? Yeah. Also one of my favorite stories.
Yeah. But I have to be honest, that's not really a matchup.
Who do you think would win?
Without question, Perry Dawsey would win.
Okay. Because Brock Sockman is an MMA fighter.
I know, but this would be Perry in his prime, which also meant he's a little crazy. He's
always been a little crazy. We will both, I will concede that. We'll go with Perry.
Okay. And then the last one, the hippo or Bo Hunterson?
Oh, if it's Bo Hunterson by himself, he's in trouble. Yeah. But if he has his family around him, he might do all right. But I think we got to go with the hippo, because the hippo has a big baby and likes to take people out from a distance.
That is true.
Bo Hunterson, while an honorable and erstwhile young man, does not have the same skill set as the hippo,
and also not nearly as crazy.
I see
a thread running through.
Not as crazy.
These.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Godfrey, thanks so much for your question. Let's see. Next one is an audio one we're going to play.
Okay, let's do it.
Hi, Scott and A. My name is Reagan. Yes, from Twitter. Yes, the ruiner. I had a question for you, Scott. At what point did you realize that all of your books were going to be part of the same universe? Keep on writing, and I hope the rest of your new year goes great.
That's a good question. I have always wanted to keep everything in the same timeline. I'm a big fan of continuity. I'm a big fan of sequels of stuff. I'm not a fan of reboots. I think reboots are way overused in Hollywood. They almost never go well, although the Battlestar Galactica reboot was fantastic. So it's not always never go well. It's almost always never go well. So I also, as a diehard sci-fi fan from back in the day, I love reading a long series where we get to book 6 and you see a character pop up out of nowhere and that character is suddenly significant. You remember that character from book 2 when they were nobody, nothing, and no one. So that has always added to the reading enjoyment for me, to see an author that's actually putting a longer form story together, not an after the fact, like there's many charts out there that show how Stephen King's works are all connected.
Right.
And it's all completely layered on top of his independent, unique individual stories.
Right.
But all of our stuff has been planned. I'd say I've started planning it probably like 6th or 7th grade, started to see how the things might all go together. There are, and they're from separate eras. So they're not, obviously all the books are not one big long series to be read in a row, but Infected, Contagious, Pandemic winds up becoming a part of the GFL, which is a part of the Crypt and everything else. So I've known for a really long time. We do have a couple of stories here and there that are not part of the Siglerverse, but for the most part, trying to keep it, it's always interesting to me when you see a modern day story and something happens in it and it affects something in the far future.
Right.
That's not just completely, it happens here and then it's gone. Of course, the big challenge for that was the Infected trilogy and how that ended. If you're going to do a Siglerverse, you have to factor in that significant problem.
Yeah. Well, and you have had to do that.
Yes.
Recently.
I had to do it with a couple books, Mount Fitzroy in particular. Should we give a blanket spoiler alert at this point?
Yes, for sure. That's a very good point. Yes. For sure. Every single thing we're allowed to talk about, things like that, of some of your upcoming releases, all of them would be spoiled. Every story would be spoiled from here on out.
The only thing that won't be spoiled is the stuff we haven't put out yet. So if you haven't, if there's stuff you want to read, if you hear a question pop up, you're like, oh, I don't want to know about that. You have my permission to bail.
Okay. So this is Dirk Peter, who comes to Siglerfest. He has a question. Dear Scott, enjoyed reading and listening to the short stories very much. Often after a story like The Hippo ends, I wanted for it to continue. I was thirsty for more. How do you decide when a short story should end so it does not go on too long? Were there stories that you'd wished to continue working on but did not or could not?
One of my weak spots is being succinct in a story. I think I have gone over the allotted word count for every short story I've written for every anthology that I've done. Usually by a significant amount. So they say, all right, you've got 5,000 words. And I wind up emailing them at 8,500 words, be like, dudes, can I have more? And usually they're like, we can't pay you from where we have a budget. I'm like, you don't need to pay me for the extra. I just, I want to finish. I want to finish the story correctly. Yeah. It's fine. So knowing when it is done is a big challenge. My stories tend to go long. With every subsequent draft, they get a little bit longer, because I see all these cool details to put in and ways to make everything go more seamlessly together. So largely it's just it's all part of the outline process, try and do an outline, try and estimate how much each part will take, and then try and stick to that as much as possible. There will be more Hippo though. There already is more Hippo out there. I think V-Wars, the 3rd book, that has the 2nd Hippo story, and we will also have that probably in an upcoming anthology.
Yeah, I think so.
What is our next anthology? Rod is Black?
Rod is Black.
So we don't know when that will be out, a couple of years from now, but there is more Hippo. So there's at least one more Hippo story. And then I probably won't write any more in that space because it's not my character anymore. That's part of the deal with the anthology.
Right. Okie doke. This one is from James Alston. He says, I've been a fan since 2012. I was 15 then, so as you can see, I grew up with Scott in my ears.
Heck yeah.
I have 2 questions. Number 1, I recently listened to The Rookie again and noticed the talk on relativity bombs. They seem like the nukes of the GFL series, yet to my knowledge, they have not been mentioned since. Will we see these weapons play a greater role in the story going forward? I have a suspicion that they will be a tool that destroys the wasps.
What, relativity bomb from what?
The Rookie.
The Rookie. And then they're not mentioned in the rest of GFL. So, gosh, I don't think I've mentioned saturation bombing in the GFL. I don't know that I've mentioned particular nukes in the planets that have been completely irradiated and wiped out, but it could be wrong.
No, I think he's saying they seem like the equivalent of nukes in the GFL universe.
Yes, the relativity bomb is in the GFL
Yeah.
era. So will you be seeing more of the relativity bombs? Yes. And also something far, far, far nastier, which we will start to hear about in GFL book. Are we in 6?
Yes, 6.
GFL book 6, which also will hopefully be out in 2020.
2020. Okay. Number 2, I have been searching online for Scott's earlier short stories and have had no luck. I want to listen or read Your Damn Fool, Charlie Brown, Kumite, and other
Kumite. Yeah.
and other earlier works. I don't even know what Kumite is.
Kumite is actually not a story. Kumite is a module we wrote. Rob Otto and Dan Baker and I wrote for Hero Games way back when they had their Champions series.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to a Gen Con and ran a Kumite at Gen Con, which people brought in their fighter with X amount of points to allocate. And then we had a big battle and drew blood on a little canvas mat for the miniatures meeting. It was pretty awesome. It's based off of Bloodsport. It's Bloodsport, but with
awesome.
Superheroes.
And is that in any of the Champions books?
No, I think that's in an Adventures Club. I think I wrote a short module on that. Adventures Club is now deceased, but it was the magazine of Iron Crown Enterprises in the Champions game. And what was the other one he was asking?
You're a Damn Fool, Charlie Brown.
You're a Damn Fool, Charlie Brown. We actually debated putting that out in one of our short story collections, but we decided that we didn't want to mess with the Charles Schultz Foundation, or what do you call that?
Yeah, it is his estate.
His estate,
I guess
yeah.
I understand is litigious.
Yeah. So we don't want to get sued by the people who make Snoopy. So
I mean, technically speaking, Scott did want to get sued by the people who make Snoopy, but cooler heads prevailed.
That was before when I needed when we needed some media exposure. I'm like, dude, if the Charles Schultz Foundation sues us, it'll be great.
No.
So that is absolutely, it's parody. We can put it out anytime we want to. It won't be a problem. We just have so much. We've had so much on our plate over the past 5 years. We were just like, we'll just pass on that for now. Maybe somewhere down the road. So I don't know where you can get it. It's maybe an old episode of the podcast. We can find that, but it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, somebody would have to share. I don't think that we host it anywhere. Anyway. Okay, next question from John Vizcarra. Of course, just the one.
I'll say the best place to go look for that might be over at Sigler Junkies in the Facebook group.
Yeah, probably.
If you are listening to this podcast, you want to be a member of Sigler Junkies. It is a closed group on Facebook that A and I do not run. Fans run it, but it's a lot of the hardcore people. And occasionally it's a little back alley trench coat type stuff like, hey, I hear you looking for an episode. You can't find no more. Come over in this alley over here. I want to show you something. So that's definitely a place to go. So go to Facebook, search for Sigler Junkies, and you will have to answer questions to get in. They don't let just anyone in.
Yeah. But don't worry. If you're listening to this, you can absolutely probably answer those questions easily.
All right. Next question.
Next question from John Vizcarra. He has, as ever, just the one question.
All right.
Regarding short stories that you write for anthologies, how much time has to pass before they can be released in your own collection? He says, thanks for all you do. You guys are amazing, and we love your tireless efforts. Big John.
It depends on the contract. By and large, it's 2 years from the publication date, and then the rights revert back to the author. Some of them don't revert back at all, like Hippo. Hippo is now the property of IDW and the Jonathan Mayberry franchise, which is now on Netflix. V-Wars show is on Netflix.
For us to run it for us to put it in Fire is Orange, we had to have permission to do it.
And they're super cool. They gave us permission, but that's one of the few. Almost everything we write, the general business practice is you write a short story, 2 years later, the rights revert back to you.
Yeah. And I think some of them, like we've seen some at the 18-month mark and some at the 36-month mark. So it varies a little bit, but not a whole lot. And they almost all work that way. The only other case is sometimes there are anthologies that will take something that has been run before, published before, or been in a different book, and they're non-exclusive. Right. And those are sort of the reverse. We can do whatever we want with those.
Good point.
Okay, next question. Corey Coleman asks, what Siglerverse story would make the best Broadway musical?
Oh, geez. Somebody was actually working on an Ancestor, the musical, a few years back, which I thought would be kind of awesome. Which would make, well, first of all,
I would love to hear something like Baby McButter.
As someone who's not a fan of musicals by and large, except for West Side Story.
Okay, because once you're
Yeah.
jet, you're a jet
Once
all
you're
the way.
You're a jet for life, man. An Officer Krupke, some good jams in that thing. Which would make the best musical? God, musicals are so foreign to my way of thinking.
Well, he has a potential tip.
Let me hear his take.
With the popularity of Cats, is anyone in your band considering writing a rock opera about Fanny the Fluffy Kitten? Now, rock opera, kind of a Broadway musical, but kind of not.
Tommy's okay as far as operas go. Fanny the Fluffy Kitten might be a little bit too lighthearted. If it was going to be associated with my name and I had any say in the matter, it would have to be violent, and there would
Although
have to be
I do
blood.
think like a full-on metal band called Fanny the Fluffy Kitten.
It's not a bad
would be
idea. It's not a
pretty
bad
good.
idea. But my musical would have to have blood, and you would have to come to the musical probably wearing a raincoat and safety goggles, because like the shtick would be, if you come to this, you're going to walk out covered in blood. We're going to get the whole audience.
Like Gallagher, but creepy.
Creepy Gallagher. Yeah.
Well,
creepy
okay,
Gallagher vibe.
creepier.
Creepier
Yeah.
Gallagher.
Okay, we're going to listen to a question from Mark Berry. Hi, Mark.
Scott and A, this is Mark.
Mark.
Happy new decade to both of you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Congrats on all of your upcoming releases. And podcast or no podcast, I'm totally looking forward to whatever you let pour out of your cream cheese frosting brains.
Sweet.
However you
Sweet.
decide to batch it up. Cheers.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you very much for that.
You're
I knew
the
that.
best.
I knew that tagline would catch on somewhere. Yes, got to batch it up.
Alrighty. Moving on, Steve Compton has this. Hey there, Scott and A. Original Junkie Comptonius here. While listening to Complex God in Fire is Orange, which was episodes 4 and 5, he helpfully adds,
Yep.
I found it interesting that the robots Petra invented to clean up the radiation in Detroit were designed to be self-replicating up to and including building and improving new factories as the original ones reached their maximum life cycle. This is basically the same functionality built into the alien probe which started the whole mess that required Detroit to get nuked. Was this Scott's intent with these two stories?
No, those are not related, but that is, people always talk about how the upcoming robot apocalypse will wipe us out. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. Maybe, but it's also not going to be robots per se. It's going to be some form of self-assembling material, self-assembling organism. And it's, once you make something that can replicate with random crossover and mutation, and it can breed and mutate faster than we can, the writing's on the wall. I was just on Facebook talking to somebody about this today. Once that cat is out of the bag, it's completely over for us as a race. It's, as they say, it's only a matter of time at that point. We can't evolve fast enough to keep up with something else. So if it's smart, and if it's able to figure things out, and it's able to breed, and there are subtle changes in it that create variations on the form, we're screwed. So I've used it now twice. Yeah, I guess I've used it twice in different areas in my fiction. It's a really fascinating concept to me.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
How the human race will inadvertently commit suicide, and that'll be the way.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Cheers.
cheery disposition. Okay, so this question comes from Ellie Swanson, whose email address or title in her email address, where mine says AB Kovacs, says Ellie Swanson from Wisconsin. Makes me very happy.
I like it.
And then she says, hi, it's Ellie Swanson from Wisconsin again with another question. So she's got others in here, but this is the one that I landed on first.
All right.
Did you get the idea for the sentient dolphin in the GFL series from the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey?
That's possible. I just ate those books up when I was a teenager, and she remains one of my favorite writers, probably in my top 3 writers. And that series was just friggin' magic. And someday I will have my dragon writing series. And it won't be quite as nice and fluffy as that one. It'll be a little bit.
Dinolition, which I know is dinosaurs and not
dinosaurs, is good. Dinosaurs,
that is not as pretty.
There's some ugliness in there. So maybe the trope of intelligent dolphins and communicating with dolphins is widespread throughout sci-fi going back 50, 60 years. I may have gotten it from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which has the tagline, thanks and so long and thanks for all the fish.
Yep.
That's when they find out the dolphins are actually paying attention to everything. May have gotten it from Star Trek, one of the old Star Treks, where they have to go back in time to save whales. there's a number of places I could have been influenced by that. But the biggest thing was the GFL era of the Siglerverse is meant to showcase a lot of different evolutionary strategies for vastly different environments, and getting at least a couple that evolved underwater. And underwater is particularly difficult because it's almost impossible to achieve fire. And without fire, you can't use metal. There's an enormous amount of things you can't do. You can't do really highly advanced weaponry. You can't do a lot of technology, as far as we know. So the dolphins were a great way to have one underwater race and then have other underwater races as well, and then show how the underwater races completely hate each other because they're all jealous that there are other ones out there, which was influenced by Anne McCaffrey for that one. There's some Anne McCaffrey story where people have gone to the stars, we've met other races, and there's one race that's like, you can say it's far left or far right, but it's polarized that they're the only ones who can fly. They are the only ones that can, like, out of all the intelligent races, they're the only ones that have wings that can fly. And then our heroine goes through a planet where they're like, we think we found a semi-intelligent flying race. And they're like, that's a declaration of war against us. This is blasphemous. And you're liars. And they break off diplomatic connections. And it's just, I was like, it was so cool to watch someone other than humans be shitty to each other in a book. So that stuck with me. So that's one area, going back to where her writings influenced me a lot.
Yeah. Lisa Brooks writes, "Hi to my most favorite people. I understand Scott says the hippo is close to some of the wildest shit he's written. I do not agree.
Oh,
I love the stories that he writes that are mind fucks. Those mess me up way more. And by mess up, I mean desire more, Scott. So Scott, do you categorize the horror like I do? Wild shit and mind fucks? Does all your horror belong in the same category?"
I don't really categorize it. That the hippo kind of took off on its own. It was driven by Jonathan Mayberry's work. He writes the Joe Ledger series, the V-Wars series, and is just blowing up as an author right now after, overnight success after 20 years of work. It's already a very messed up world where evil vampires exist, and vampires just like us exist, and there's all kinds of blood and gore in it. And he asked me to write in that world. And I was like, all right, we're going to have to jump this up a notch. How do we jump this up a notch? And that's where I came up with the concept of the hippo and all the horrible things that happen there. But no, I don't categorize between straight horror and a mind fuck. If I do it correctly, those should be kind of indiscernible from each other. Mm-hmm. But I don't really have any categories. The only categories, I guess, are things that I generally try to avoid, but everything is fair game. But I'm glad you like the mindfucky parts, because that's good. I'll work on more of those.
Okie doke. Moving on. This is Brian O'Connor. He says, "Hi, Scott. Loving the hippo and the conversation Harry had with his headcanon. That was epic. Years ago, you podcast a spoiler for Chapter 1 of Mount Fitzroy. Is that premise for the opening still in play, or have you moved the story in another direction?"
I have moved the story in another direction. I wrote that one chapter, thought it was pretty cool. Went back and read it, I guess, 8 years after that, which was 6 years ago. And I was like, okay, this needs a lot of work. So I rewrote it, and I think I got like 3 chapters into the book and then put it aside as we were working on other things. And of course, I just reread all that last year when I started in the final draft of Mount Fitzroy. I'm like, all of this has got to go. It just... Sadly, it didn't make sense. So that chapter 1 is still a little gem sitting out there all by itself. Mm-hmm. And actually, that chapter 1 predated the final version of Earthcore itself. Mm-hmm. So it does not line up at all. So it's gone. And the new opening is pretty cool, if I do say so myself.
Okay, from David Stubblefield. He says, "Hello, Scott. Thank you so much for all the great stories. I loved the character Mr. Meow Meow. I so wish there were more backstory to him. Will he appear in any more stories?"
I don't think so. That's what
I think so.
Mr. Devil Lamb. That is a one-off story. It's not Siglerverse, because at this point we do not have talking cats that run gangster organizations and kidnap people and take them to the vet to have their nuts snipped off. It's just not a thing. I'm not saying it can't be a thing in the future.
In the multiverse somewhere, that might be a thing, but not in this one.
Although, if we bumped it up to the GFL era,
Still no talking.
There could be smart cats running shit in the GFL era.
Well, perhaps, but there aren't so far. So you're going to have to get on that.
Five books without talking cats.
It's true.
Say, quit busting my nuts for crying. I just talked about talking dolphins. And now we get pressure for talking cats.
Everybody wants you to. Uh-oh.
Having hard palpitations. It's so much pressure.
He's coming, Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you, honey.
Okay. From Matt Spalding, we have this question.
Okay.
In Nocturnal, why didn't Hillary and her followers leave Firstborn and Marie in San Francisco and take a king to another state or country? Then Hillary would have turned into a mommy and she could have spread the race as she wanted rather than stay close and make complicated plans, which Firstborn could stop.
Possibly a couple of reasons. Number one, Hillary might be lazy. That's an enormous amount of work and an enormous amount of risk. Number two, that's her home. As we see from people, patriotic people from all nations down to, town, city level, state level, like we just watched the national championship football game last night. And the people of Louisiana are extremely proud and very closely connected to the state of Louisiana. It's a much tighter thing than, say, where I'm from, Michigan. People are connected to Michigan, but it's not as big a badge of honor as it is to be connected to the state of Louisiana for the people who are from there. So Hillary, that's her place. She's grown up there. That space under San Francisco has been there for hundreds of years. So she probably doesn't want to leave. And then there's the other thing. If she does leave and takes a king with her, she's probably smart enough to know that Firstborn's not just going to leave her alone. Because if she gets found in another place, eventually that will gravitate back towards the hive in San Francisco. And the same problem will happen. The problem Firstborn is trying to prevent is humanity finding out about this offshoot species that is stronger and more powerful and more dangerous, because he's been there and he's lived through it, and he knows humans are going to slaughter them if they find out at all. So Hillary knows she either does it at home or she's screwed.
I also think that there's the devil that you know, right? San Francisco has one savior, and that's it.
Right.
Like striking out on your own somewhere else, you don't know if there's, every town sheriff is a savior.
Good point.
That sort of thing. And that has got to be, would have to be terrifying too, because she would be transitioning and building her family and community. So she would have very little in the way of protection. Yeah. Unlike mommy.
Yep. And we may see more of that in future books when I get around to the Nocturnal sequels.
Okie doke. We have let's see, a question. And there it is, an audio question. For this is from Darren Wall. Hang on.
Hi, Scott. This is a question about Hippo. I wonder what is the motivation behind the torturing of the brain. Why is that such a threat to somebody who's alive? Typically, once you're dead, whatever is done to your body afterwards doesn't matter. Was this intended to be related to the fact that perhaps Peter wasn't killed by traditional vampire slaying means, and therefore the brain was still alive while it was being boiled?
No, that is, I wouldn't call it the torturing of the brain. It's the unexplained part of the story is that the hippo needs to consume a particular kind of protein, just like all of the vampires do. All of the vampires kill and drink blood for a reason. So he's in denial that he's one of these creatures. And as he cooks the brains, he winds up getting the intake of that particular unexplained element of physiology. And that's what keeps him going and basically keeps him sane. Towards the end, when he's starting to get a little twitchy, a little shaky, he's like, I gotta go I need that icing. I feel better after I get that icing. So it's not meant to be torturous, although he does lord it in front of any other captive vampire he has. If you don't do this, it may have sounded like I cut myself off in mid-sentence because I hit the wrong button. And I stopped the recording there.
Cut yourself off in mid-sentence.
I did. So I believe I have said all there is to be said about torturing brains.
Right. I think so.
And spoiling the shit out of the story. So I think I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Now we are going to move on to the next question.
This is a little long, but we have we got a handful of these in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to read this one, and everyone else who sent in a lovely note, Scott has seen them, but I'm just going to read this one since they're a little bit long.
Okay.
This one's from Clint Keel.
Clint!
So I haven't been listening to your podcast since the first version of Nocturnal, but it has been a long time. I remember hearing the original version of Earthcore before you updated it to fit into the Siglerverse in the glory days of patiobooks.com.
Yes, great times.
That's where I came across your books back when there were only a couple of them. I was and still am very grateful that you were willing to share your stories with the world at no charge back then, because I wouldn't have been able to buy them. I'm sure you get inundated with fan mail, so I'll make this long story short and get to the point. In your good news in the last episode about continuing the weekly podcast was super mega exciting, as John Tweedy might say.
Mm-hmm.
No, your podcast isn't the only bright spot in my life, but it certainly is one of the big ones. I look forward to hearing what you have to share every week, even when they're stories I've already heard. And I've bought almost all of them from Audible, even though I still have the original podcast downloaded and have listened to them more times than I can count. Before I ramble on too long, let me just say this. Thank you. Thank you for finding a way, despite your assuredly busy schedule, to make time to continue sharing your weekly updates and the stories that you write, as well as your own personal story about the journey. The story of your journey from then to now and the stories you write of the lives of others have been one of the highlights of my own personal story, and I can't express how grateful I am that I'll continue to get my junkie fix every week.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so we did get quite a lot of lovely emails saying, cool,
Nice.
Thanks so much. And I just wanted to acknowledge them, but I'm not going to read every one of them.
There's a lot of them. But for everybody who wrote in with a sentiment like that, thank you very much. We try really hard to make sure we make as much a bunch of stuff now available. But way back when is like we've all been there. I've been in the spot where I don't have enough money to go buy a book and shit like that, and it's frustrating. And you got to prioritize your money in other places. Almost everybody goes through phases of that, some much longer than others, but being able to make the stories free and give them away was a way to provide entertainment to a lot of people who had far more important things on their mind and bigger things. But it's nice to get that bit of escapism, and we were able to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as the industry changes and becomes more digital and everything goes to a subscription base and things like that, it is actually getting harder and harder to be competitive as a publisher and an author, trying to figure all that out. So we have had to make some decisions that I don't know that we would have otherwise made to conform with the way that the business is now being run. So one of the emails or concerns that we got were sort of like, but you said you'd always be there for us, and it resonated with us a lot. But it's increasingly hard to do that. So that we could find a middle ground was a really nice thing.
Well, you also I would like people to think about the number of entertainment programs or news programs out there that have gone for 15 years. And that's what we're at now, right? 15 years coming up in March.
Mm-hmm.
March is 15 years. So Always Sunny in Philadelphia will be...
Or maybe 14.
14?
I think it's 2005, right?
Yeah, 2005, March
15,
2020 will be 15. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is heading into its 15th season, and that makes it the longest running live action sitcom in history. I think the other one before that was All in the Family, but that's besides the point. Then you've got shows like 2020 and Nightline. Other than that, there's very few things last more than 3 or 5 years. All of the new juggernaut podcasts that have come out, they are all like Serial and all the other ones. Mm-hmm. They've immensely more popular than ours. They're also not going to be there 5 years from now. These are discrete, limited run entertainment things, just like a season of TV,
sure,
or a series online, etc.
Yeah,
you got to go back 15 years and look at what was available online. Like that's the nascent days of YouTube. We might even predate YouTube if I think.
But the big and that's sort of the point. Like the big surprise to me is that it is difficult in some ways to continue to do the thing that we have always been doing, because it would mean like we can't sell every book to a publisher without sell. It used to be we would absolutely be like, can we keep the audiobook rights? And we got to do that.
Yep.
And now literally none of the big houses will talk to you.
Yes.
And sign a contract with you unless they control that. And because now podcasts are a thing, of course. So now it matters.
Yes.
So it's interesting to try and find a way to honor that. And I keep thinking to myself, like, there might be somebody out there who's still mad that 8-tracks went away. But
Yes.
it's a silly way to say it, but it's sort of harmless because literally the entire industry changed around them. It just,
Yes.
you couldn't do that if you wanted to, because you couldn't get a player today that probably works anymore, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so if that was your big thing and that was where you put your whole investment, that would be hard to maintain. That's kind of happening in the subscription-based and the new world order of digital media and stuff. So we're struggling along as long as we can.
The industry's changed completely at least twice during that 15 years.
Yeah.
Ebooks came in and changed everything associated with the death knell of print, which hasn't happened. Then the audiobooks came in, and now audiobooks are the one growth industry of the publishing, the one growth area of the publishing industry. So us just keeping the rights to our own books, for us to keep the audio rights to our own books, we have to put the book out ourselves, as A said. So right now, if I want to podcast something and I sell it to Del Rey or Random House or Simon & Schuster, can't do it. So that was not a problem before. The whole Generations trilogy, we kept the audiobook rights and everything went great.
Well, and what's so fascinating to me about that is that's not that long ago. And that discussion, one of the reasons we worked with Scott Shannon and that whole crew was at Del Rey is because we did that collaboratively. When we met them for this meeting that became the Generations trilogy in New York, they were all into this would be a great angle for the podcast. And I see you did this where you did prequel fiction, stuff like that. They were all into it to let us keep the audiobook rights so that we could podcast it and then leverage that for marketing. And that was like, what, 6 years ago?
There's a lot of different facets to it. Number one, we ran out of content. Number two, us being able to share content gets harder if we're going to sell books in the open market to big publisher. Number three, any entertainment program that has lasted 15 years, think about your favorite stuff and how many of those things lasted 15 years. Not even Doctor Who had a huge break in the middle of it. You can't count that all together.
Right.
So it's rare for anybody to have accomplished what we have accomplished. We're excited to keep it going with Nocturnal because connecting with you guys is not only super fun and super satisfying to me as a creator, it is also an integral part of our business. Being able to reach out to the hardcore fans, be like, we got this stuff coming up. Want you guys to be aware of it. It's something special that very few authors have, and we're glad we can keep it going.
Yeah, and to be fair, at least to me, it is quite a surprise how happy people are now who also would have been happy with a break. They're yes, I have heard this or I haven't heard this. That's come up a few times, and there's not another way to get this unless, of course, somebody in the Sigler Junkies who might be able to provide it for you. There's not another way to get it. Yeah. So this is a nice, unique opportunity, and we're kind of working through. I don't remember what you said about it last week, but we're sort of working through if the podcast will be us talking or you talking in the beginning, real time 2020, and then playing the entire podcast as is from when it came out.
Yeah, we still got to figure that out.
But we're working on that, and we'll know in a week.
So at least for the year of 2020, all your Sundays belong to me still.
Okay, this one came from Julio. He says, "Hi guys, in Earth Corps, we learned that the chief of security, Patrick O'Doyle, worked for the military for decades doing special missions. He had no family and no addictions, yet when he is released from service, he has to work bagging groceries and has not a dime to his name. Was there a reason for this? Was it cut out of some previous point in the editing of the books? Thanks, and I hope you have an excellent 2020.
No, you haven't missed anything. There's so many characters in Earth Corps and so many characters in Mount Fitzroy that there's can't do a really deep dive on some of the backstory of the characters. But that answer to your question will be seen in Mount Fitzroy. In Mount Fitzroy, Patrick O'Doyle is a major character, and you're going to find out more about his past and how he wound up coming to work for Earth Corps is a direct part of that past, and it greatly influences how things go in Mount Fitzroy.
Okie doke. So I have another question from Ellie Swanson from Wisconsin.
All right.
Hi, Scott. It's Ellie Swanson again. About the hippo. Does this mean the hippo is a blood too, but in denial?
Yes.
Yes. Also, spoiler alert, we did already. just saying. Yeah, it's that earlier question that Lisa had about the mindfuck versus the wild ride. Hippo is one of the, I think I've said this a bunch of times on the cast, my favorite story, idea kernel is Redman. That's my favorite story that you've written. But fascinatingly, I'm not sure I would want more of it because it's so heartbreaking.
Uh-huh.
And I think the hippo has a little bit of that resonating in it. Like he's trying so desperately to be the person he wants to be, but he can't because he's not a person.
He's not a person.
And that is a mind fuck and a wild ride, that story.
I think at least you might go back and re-listen to the end of that, or feel free to email us on that. But I feel like Hippo was a giant mind fuck at the end of the story. Because, I tend to have low-level sophomoric humor in almost all of my work. But a lot of times that is a device. It is one of my misdirection devices. If I start out with a certain approach and you've got Big Baby making all these, you got a handgun making all these crass comments, and it's funny and it's entertaining, but it's also, it's a construction technique meant to take you down a path and guide you so that when you see the real path and how things really went, you are caught more off guard and it hits home harder. So that is the technique of the mindfuck foo, if you will.
Well, yes.
Yes.
All right. So we have Jesse has a question.
All
We're
right.
gonna play.
Hello, all. This is Jesse from Denver, and I wanted to thank you, first of all, for all your hard work over the years producing such a great podcast that's inspired me.
Awesome.
I want to congratulate you on rolling the dice and going with the original version of Nocturnal. I think that shows some stones, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Cool.
My question is this. We, of course, hear, Scott, we hear your mellifluous voice very often, and we hear occasionally, not often enough, but we do hear from ARealGirl.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering if you are ever going to put Ricky Berg or any of the other empty setters on the show, and I guess it's more of a request than a question. Thank you.
Well, we put them on at various Siglerfests. We've gotten Iceberg and Pondy and Big John. We've gotten people up on the mic so you can hear them at those events. So the one thing that we don't do that a lot of podcasts do, and we used to do, is get remote voices on the podcast. So we would do, a Skype call or a Google call and have people record locally and then send that file to us, put it all together. The vast majority of podcasts you hear where you have 2 or 3 or 4 people on the show, those are all done remotely, and they assemble them after the fact. He's been on a couple different podcasts that aren't ours related that were like that.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of work to the process.
Yeah. And it adds a lot of work for each person.
Yeah. And then you can go through a whole podcast, find out somebody screwed up on there and didn't do it quite right. And then the whole thing is crappy. So we got rid of that strategy several years ago, primarily to streamline things and keep me on the keyboard more, writing fiction instead of at the recording desk editing stuff.
Right.
So we don't do that a whole lot. You'll just have to wait for those special occasions. The main reason they're not on the cast is they're not around.
Yeah. Although we do, on the flip side of that, we do every once in a while when someone is in town and we do see them.
That's right.
We do podcasts. So certainly we can keep that in mind if we have folks like Big John or Steve Rickyberg or whoever come to San Diego, because we've done that like with Evo.
Few times.
But yeah, mostly it's an occasion of it. This podcast takes about 90 minutes to do start to finish, which is important for Scott to be able to write as much as he's writing.
Mm-hmm.
Okie doke. This question comes from Josh. Dude, I've been shoving your goodness into my ears since 2004 or 5.
Sweet.
With the first podcast of Earthcore. I was living in Japan at the time, and even with all the oddness of living abroad, I still needed some of that good old American weirdness in my life. I've been with you on this ride ever since. And as sad as I am that this ride might come to an end, I totally understand and respect your decision. Dude, we fixed this problem. Yes. So with all that out of the way, my question is the turd-shaped planetoid, the Reef, takes place on a dead, desiccated husk of one of the old gods, the giant worm-like creatures from the Generations trilogy?
I would have to say, hey, yes, it is.
Nicely done, Josh.
Let that slide in there, and I probably should have kept that back for a while, but all you MFers, just don't tell nobody. It's just between us. It's just between us. Yes, it is.
Lovely. Okie doke. Hang on. I have this question from Joseph Aldred.
Okay.
While I am an every week listener and am eagerly awaiting Aliens Phalanx, I don't recall hearing the FDO mentioning if it will be a podcast. It is understandable if the publisher would not want it given away, but us junkies do need our fixes, man. As always, thank you too for bringing the weekly dose of horror extravaganza. Oh, horror extravaganza could be added to the list.
Could be.
Good luck in whatever the way the podcast moves, and know I'll be here waiting for my fix each week.
You'll still be getting your fix each week, as we have covered. You probably know by now. But no, Aliens Phalanx will not be podcast. We do not. That was a work for hire, which I did primarily as a labor of love. I think you guys are totally going to eat that book up. It's great. The hardcovers are still out there. If you want to pre-order a hardcover, you can do that through your local bookstore, which we highly recommend, or just do it through Amazon. I believe there was 250 signed hardcover pre-orders with a special insert tip-in sheet, it's called, with some special art on it. Those are all gone. They're gone. There's still probably 200 or 300 hardcovers left that can be your bookstore can order, get it through Amazon. So if you want a hardcover, you got to get it now because they will not be making any more of those. But Titan Books owns that. And I think we can say who the audiobook narrator is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, we're really excited. Turns out I've been chatting with this guy a bunch. He seems like a really nice guy. It's Bronson Pinchot. You may know him from his sitcom fame days back in the day. That name does not ring any bells. Don't worry about it. He's going to do a great job. Those of you who know who he is are like, what? Yes, it's actually him.
But what I love is it seems like you guys are, so Scott offered that he would be very happy to text directly with the narrator or the producer, because we find sometimes that things go astray because they don't feel like they can reach out and ask. And so he gets a text saying, hi, good to meet you, whatever. And it turns out that they're quite similarly minded creatives, which is, I think, lovely if you think of different mediums and different MOs and everything else.
Right.
There's been a handful of back and forth where you're like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
And he says that out loud. And I'm like, are you talking to the narrator again? So it's fun. I hope that actually works. I think it's going to be lovely. And I listened to quite a good many of his books.
Good. But he seems like he seems like he's really into it. He was asking a lot of character driven questions about it. He had some scenes that were his favorites that he was very particular on. There is a character in the book whose name is Creen, Creen, and Creen is a very smart, very asshole-ish young man. And that was the one Bronson grooved the most on. He's like, I can't wait. to do this guy. So we're very excited about it. Very excited about it.
Okie doke. I have questions from Todd Taylor. Hey, Todd. How are you?
What's up, Todd?
Dear Scott and A, thanks again for another great podcast. Listening to the hippo not only made me hungry, it also made me wonder if there might be a food-related compendium in the Siglerverse works. Will we ever get a Siglerverse cookbook or cocktail guide? Some potentials that come to mind: Key candied shushalix, Collect the Daring's spindly spider snacks.
Yep.
The hippo's creamy cupcakes.
Yep.
Ma Tweedy's tuna noodle casserole.
Of course.
And Junkie Gin Fizz and so on. I will say this, I do want you to chime in, but we do have a couple of recipes we could share.
Which ones do we have recipes for?
Well, we have, so if you don't yet know this, spoiler alert, Ma Tweedy is somewhat fashioned on Scott's mom, Carol.
Yep.
So we do have Carol's recipe for
the
tuna
TNC.
Noodle casserole.
Got to get that TNC, dog.
So that's kind of Ma Tweedy's tuna noodle casserole. So we can absolutely, I can make sure both of these things are in the post at scottsigler.com.
Yes. We'll put it in the show notes. Yes.
The other thing is,
it's delicious. It's so good.
You are a big fan.
I love it.
The other thing is not quite already published, but absolutely counts. Your good friend Daniel Baker, PhD.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is also somewhat of a craft cocktail aficionado.
He is.
And he created from scratch something called the Empty Setter.
Oh, that's right.
Us.
That's right.
So we'll also, with his permission, I'll get his permission, and then we'll put this also in the show notes. He created the Empty Setter, which is 2 ounces of Michter's American bourbon, a 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. If you're Dan Baker, you use your caramel simple syrup you made yourself.
Yes.
and then 2 to 4 dashes of bitters. And he says he uses the sassafras that we happened to gift him last year, and then stir it with a big rock of ice. So we'll put both of those recipes, which I think totally count real world Siglerverse recipes, in the show notes.
Okay.
But other than that, do you think there'll be a cookbook?
I don't think so, but I would like to point out that if you want an example of how things work at Empty Set, what our two personalities are, it's A saying, I'll see if I can get permission from Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD in Lysis. And I'm like, permission? Fuck him. We're putting it up. So there you go. There's the difference between us.
It's his recipe.
I can see you're getting
And
anxious. I can see the anxiety in you right now.
Definitely twirling my headphone cord around my fingers.
All right.
Okay, so Todd, I think probably not.
Probably not a
mostly
cookbook.
Because all of those options that you mentioned sound pretty gross.
Is it Steve Schnacks who does the spider snacks?
He does. He
Those are
does.
delicious.
Yeah, and the shishliks too. He does.
Yeah, the shishliks, yeah.
Which are awesome. I think they're like they're chili powdered roasted pecans maybe, or walnuts, and then they're dipped in like a candied apple, kind of a red shell.
Yeah.
They're delicious, but if you have more than one, then the heat hits you.
Yeah.
Whew, it's a big day.
And we did have batched up cupcakes at a Siglerfest.
Yes, we definitely did have bachelor. I mean, they technically did not include brains, as far as we know.
As far as we know. Plausible deniability is very important in any enterprise.
Absolutely. So we have another audio question.
All right.
Greetings, FDO.
Greetings.
My name is Godfrey. I'm a new lifelong junkie and aspiring pusher. I pledge to spread Siglerism far and wide here in China until monuments in the shape of your magnificent bald head are built in anticipation of your rise to absolute power.
Yes.
My question is this. What kind of microphone and other equipment do you use for your voice work and podcast?
You know, I was just thinking to myself, gosh, he's got such a great voice.
Yeah.
And then he asked that question.
Yeah.
That's
He
maybe
seems to be very
related.
focused on things. All right. You know what? I'm going to pause this. I'm going to go look at everything. I'll be right back. And I'm back. You people at home think no time at all passed. It's awesome. The time travel. Okay. All right. Godfrey, here we go. Here's what I'm using in the booth. First of all, what we're using right now at our co-podcasting table / shipping desk are Sennheiser E835s directly into a Zoom H6. And then we will either do the post and edit this, or Steve Rickyberg will do the post and edit this. When I record the regular podcast, in the olden days, anything before this time last year was a RE27 microphone. And now I'm using a Telefunken M82. I did not buy it simply because the name was Telefunken, and I can tell people to telefunk yourself. It's not the only reason I bought that.
But it's one of the reasons.
It's one of the reasons.
I don't think it's even one of them.
It's actually a drum mic, a kick drum mic, and it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic for my sultry, silky, mellifluous voice. Speaking of silk, that goes into the Neve 511 Portico 500 series preamp, which goes into a Drummer DS10 noise gate, D510, excuse me. And then that goes into the Joe Meek EQ, which is called a MEQ because he's Joe Meek.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome, MEQ. And that's where we control, dial back our mids and highs and all that other stuff, which finally goes into an Aphex EH BB500, which is a big bottom. The Aphex, the BB stands for big bottom.
Yes.
It accentuates the lows, accentuates the highs. All of that those are all 500 series units in a radial workhorse WR8500 rack. That all goes into a Scarlett 18i20, which then is the direct interface into the computer. We record from the booth. There's a lot of stuff. From the booth, we record into Logic Pro X, the current version of that, and we do all of our editing and all of our exporting right from there.
Wonderful.
Gear is fun.
So I think we have covered all the things that we need to cover. Y'all all know that Nocturnal is coming back next week. And you know that Siglerfest, we haven't determined dates yet or location. And as soon as we do that, you'll hear it. We'll broadcast it everywhere. We'll put it on social media. We'll put it in Sigler Junkies. We'll put it on the posts, everything. And then the last thing is we still have the Gangster up for pre-order. And you can go to scottsigler.com/store and find The Gangster there for pre-order. You can
That's
personalize it.
GFL Book 6 is The Gangster.
Mhm.
I highly advise you guys get your pre-order in now because I think we still have several moons before that comes out. We've already sold a whole bunch of them.
Mhm.
I'm anticipating a new crop of fans coming in from the Aliens Phalanx book. So if you've not ordered your copy or copies of The Gangster, you should do so now. You also should order your copies of Phalanx if you want the Dead Tree version.
Okie doke. So I think that's it for this week. But there is one audio question that I want to recognize that we are not actually going to play on the podcast. It's a joke from way back that Matt Edens, you two, and Scott and I are going to share privately. But I wanted to recognize because you did actually do the work of sending in an MP3.
Yep.
That we are with your permission, not going to actually play it on the cast.
Yes.
So to everybody else, thank you so much for listening. We will come back next week with the newly zombified, brought back from the dead, this one time only. We're never going to put it in a book form. We're never going to put it in an audio
next week is our year in review, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Yes, 2 weeks from now. We'll come back with
now.
that Nocturnal. So get it while the getting is good, and we will talk to you all
real soon. You have been listening to Fire is Orange, a short story compilation by #1 New York Times bestselling novelist Scott Sigler. Narrated by Scott Sigler, Ray Porter, and A. Kovacs. Produced by A. Kovacs. Engineered by Steve Rickyberg. Copyright 2019, Empty Set Entertainment. All rights reserved. For more information about the author, visit scottsigler.com. Theme music by the band Amps and Volts.